Good afternoon. Today's second Saturday lecture series will focus on one of the most horrific, horrendous events in civil rights history. That is the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing, which occurred on September 15th, 1963 in Birmingham, Alabama. 4 little girls were killed in the bombing. 20 other people were injured in the bombing. And this represented the 17th bombing that took place in Birmingham in the previous decade. This is the largest loss of life of the civil rights era to that point. So this is what we're going to talk about. The little girls are going to be featured, and we will try and get you some facts about this situation. One of the things that led up to the Birmingham campaign, and it was a campaign and we'll go into more details that are various precursor issues of the civil rights era. The modern civil rights era was basically dated from 1954, which was the Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka, which was a conglomeration of 4 cases challenging public school segregation in various areas of the country. The Supreme Court ruled unanimously 9-0 that segregation was to be outlawed. Okay, 1954 marked the Montgomery Improvement Association fight to desegregate public transportation in Montgomery, Alabama. That's where Martin Luther King got his start at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, and the heroine of the story, Rosa Parks, rose to prominence. Rosa Parks was an activist before the Montgomery bus boycott. It is basically insulting to think that she got on the bus and she was tired and she sat down and didn't move. Okay, that's not the story. Okay, she was very active in her community, looking for ways to challenge segregation and other inequalities, and she was a part of the NAACP as well as other civic organizations. They were looking for a test case to challenge public transportation segregation, and in fact, 6 months to a year earlier, they thought they had found a person who could challenge that in the body of Claudette Colvin, who was a teenager who was willing to make a legal challenge. However, she had some issues, one of which was she was pregnant at the time, and they thought that would have been a detriment for her case to go forward. Emmett Till disappeared in Money, Mississippi over the weekend of August 29th. Supposedly, he whistled at a clerk in a store or sassed her or touched her or something, and her husband and one of his friends disappeared Emmett Till. And 2-3 days later, he turned up in a river with a 70-pound gin mill fan tied around his neck. Okay? So these are the kinds of things that were going on. In 1957, the famous picture of the Little Rock 9 students integrating Central High, where Governor Orville Faubus had pledged to defend segregation. Eisenhower had to send 102nd Airborne troops to enforce the court-ordered integration, and he basically, deputize or federalize the Arkansas National Guard. In 1960, Greensboro sit-in was like not the first, but it was one of the earlier lunch counter protests in Greensboro, North Carolina, that basically fought to integrate lunch counters. 1961, Freedom Riders made a case to integrate interstate public transportation by taking Continental Trailways and Greyhound buses throughout the South. They were able to take integrated buses, in other words, they were not forced to sit at the back of the bus. But in the South, once they crossed over into places like Georgia, North Carolina, Alabama, Mississippi, they would be forced to take positions in the back. Freedom rides went through Alabama, Anniston in particular, and Birmingham, and basically when they got word that they were coming, Klansmen with the alliance of local law enforcement basically firebombed the buses, okay? And in 1962, James Meredith successfully in the sense that he had very good federal support to ensure that his registration and attendance was at Ole Miss. He was the first graduate of Ole Miss. So that's the kind of background of all of these things going. You had sit-ins, you had boycotts, you had murders, you had school integration, all of which, lunch counter integration, all of this was going on that was a precursor to the events of '63 that were happening in Birmingham. On April 3rd in Birmingham, there was a campaign that's called Project C, which was Project Confrontation. Birmingham was one of the most segregated cities in the country of its size and development. So what was the campaign all about? You're going to be really amazed because the people were asking in retrospect so little. Most of the employment in Birmingham was, if you're a woman, you're going to be a domestic, and if you're a man, you're going to work like primarily agriculture services, okay? And this was an attempt to we can't buy in the department store because you could buy, but you got to basically buy under segregated conditions, and you would not have any kind of black workers, clerks in the stores, so that would have been integrate the stores, hire some black clerks, and the ultimate thing was we need to have black policemen and law enforcement, okay? That's what the three basic things were, okay? And they protested. There was a year-long boycott of downtown, and the merchants were like, okay, well, guess what? You're not going to respect us by hiring us and allowing us to work in your store, so we're not going to patronize you. And by a year effort, they okay, we're going to have to do something. So the merchants came to the conclusion, we're going to hire the clerks and we're going to integrate, okay? So you would think that would have been over with, okay, but it wasn't, okay? The powers that be, the politicians, would not stand for integration, okay? So they said, we're not gonna let you do that. We don't care what kind of deals you made, we're not gonna accept that. And because it was really long, they felt like they need to introduce new energy into the campaign. So in May, they launched the Children's Crusade. Now, this is like one of the misconceptions about civil rights was that these things were spontaneous. They weren't really thought out, that people like, oh no, we're going to go down there and protest today. The Children's Crusade had a lot of community input in that. A lot of people would like, we don't want to subject children to this. How can we do it? But the rationale was sound in the sense that the children, unlike their parents, could not be fired or the employment terminated because they were not employed. They were going to school, okay? They were trained to respond to the dogs and not run and not show fear and look the dog straight in the eye and all of the kind of things that you would make them safer, but also handle the protest aspect in a responsible way, okay? The students were actually trained, so it was not a notion that they went out there blindly. They woke up after Sunday school singing hymns and walked out into the street into this maw of violence. You had a downtown boycott was going on. You had a law enforcement officer by the name of Theophilus Eugene Bull Connor, who was responsible for arresting people, arresting children, filling up his jails. When you see the iconic images of civil rights where you have police dogs and water hoses, that's what the Birmingham campaign was about. Okay, June 12th, Medgar Evers was assassinated. He was the NAACP leader in Mississippi, and that was like these things that these civil rights people knew each other, and the constituents for them really were affected by these tragedies. Medgar was coming home at the end of an evening. He'd been out traveling, and they shot him in his driveway. And that was one of the things that I got to see, the bloodstained driveway some years later, because my mother's friend that she was in graduate school with in Baton Rouge at Southern lived next door. So I got to see that. So it was like a little bit more personal for me. March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom took place on August 28th. And to that time, that was the largest single demonstration in the history of Washington, D.C. And that was where Martin Luther King uttered he gave the famous "I Have a Dream" speech. And again, we always think like we have heard Martin Luther King speak. That was the first time that the country, first of all, got a chance to hear Martin Luther King, and particularly hear a black man in general have an extended oration for the country. In August of that year, the other thing that happened was the news went from 15 minutes national news in the evening to 30 minutes national news in the evening. Okay, so one of the fourth images that we're going to interrogate or think about was the picture by Thomas Williams, Tears of the Fallen. We're going to have a memory shrine that was created by Frank Frazier, memorializing the 4 little girls. We're going to have an extended look at The Tattooed Man is the title, by Billy Morrow Jackson. And then we're going to have another final piece, which is I Remember Birmingham, a print by John T. Scott. Tears of the Fallen. Thomas Williams pictures a young woman, and I don't know, he doesn't give us a hint that mother, daughter, sister, whatever, is shedding tears for the 4 little girls. And if you see, the teardrops contain the image, each teardrop contains an image of the little girls. Okay, this is, we're going to get a chance to get the, look at the memory box in real life. In other words, we're going to pull it out the room and show you after the talk. This is Frank Frazier's basically shrine to these 4 little girls, and Frank has it as a apartment building, urban apartment building. He has the little girl's name, Cynthia, Denise, Addie, and Cynthia, Denise, and Carole. Okay. Anyway, on the side, 1963, and he's got the urban apartment building. He has antennas over there. And Frank, this is Frank's recollection about how he felt and how he got to know about it, because this is the thing about, this was a media in transition, because Frank basically put these little girls in the living room of the people up north who had no real idea about the conditions of the South, Jim Crow South, and segregation, and they couldn't imagine that. And then they certainly couldn't imagine them people getting killed by that. But this is the way Frank, as he was growing up, in his formative years in New York, Frank grew up in New York, that this is the way that he got informed. In other words, like now we got Instagram and Facebook and all of these things. Well, back in the day, you had national black newspapers and news magazine. Ebony was a magazine that was big. Jet magazine was a news weekly that covered everything black in the country, like, athletics, if it was social activities, if it was civil rights, and anything. It was a weekly publication that carried the news. The Tattooed Man. This is Billy Morrow Jackson. He was a socially conscious white guy. And this is one of the things, this is one of my favorite prints. In fact, this one and the other one that you're going to follow, The Tattooed Man. Okay, tell me about what you see in this film. What do you see in this image? And there's no wrong answers.
The victims before handed on his chest.
Correct. That's exactly right. Okay, what else you see? Who is that guy? This is not a hard question, so the obvious answer is the obvious answer. So who is that guy? What is his name? What is his nickname? Uncle Sam. Okay, that's Uncle Sam. Okay, which is basically a character created by an illustrator, ad man by the name of Thomas Nass, who basically created him for a World War I soldier recruitment effort. But he's pictured as a top hat, with a top hat, some chin whiskers, and when he's fully dressed, he has a vest and a swallowtail coat, which is basically mean that a coat that comes up and rather than it's like 2 spikes at the end of the coat. And so that's Uncle Sam, which is like a representative of the United States. So we're gonna go over the thing. Now he's half his face covered. Why do you think that is?
Shame?
Right. Shame and shadiness. Okay? That means there's something shady and shameful going on that I gotta cover my face. Okay? What is on up below his whiskers? What is that? Can you see?
Yeah, an eagle.
It's an eagle. Okay. Eagle is what?
Liberty?
Well, eagle is the symbol for America. That's the bald eagle. Is right. It's the eagle is the embodiment. Again, he puts a lot of symbols for America on this. Uncle Sam, America. The eagle, America. The flag, America. Okay, but the eagle has in its claws clutching arrows. Okay. When you have an eagle grasping arrows as opposed to olive branches, because again, it could be depicted as in some representations, it holds olive branches, but when he's holding arrows, that signifies a state of war. Okay? Fighting's going on. And when you have the shield, that is also like defensiveness and war is going on. Okay? The four little girls, we've already talked about them, but he recognizes that they were like almost war victims, and he has memorializes them in the tattoos on his chest. What's on his left bicep?
Confederate?
That's on the right. The left bicep is American flag, and the right bicep is a Confederate flag.
Right.
Okay, and basically that what he is posing is a duality of the situation. Like in the one body of America, you have these opposing influences. So you got the influences of freedom, justice, and equality that's embodied in the Declaration of the Independence and the Constitution, and then you have the Confederate flag, which symbolizes that people as property, and the buying and selling of people, and then people who are less than. So that's okay. Now what is on his forearm on the arm that's holding the hat? What is that? What do you see on that? There's some writing. Okay, that is American spelled backwards. Or America spelled backwards. That's Nasarima. That is not like, people can kind of say, oh, well, yeah, that's just America's going backwards, or it's America's backwards, so that's what that means. No, that's not what that means. It means that there was a terrorist group in Georgia who basically did all of the bombing throughout the South. In other words, this was a bomb school, okay? They would go and get lessons to make the bombs and go back to their community and blow up crap, okay? And that was the name of the terrorist organization, Nasarima, okay? And the person that blew up Dynamite Bob Chambliss, who was the ringleader of the Birmingham bombing, and his 4 compatriots attended that school. Okay, so this is like, again, this is not random, okay, oh yeah, well, I'm gonna go bomb a church. No, these people trained and planned and planted bombs, and it was not like that this was not a fit of rage. This was like, we hate these people, they messing up our lives, we don't want things go this way, so we're gonna plan, direct, and hide our intentions and go bomb people. Okay, that's what that means. In other words, it's not just a figure of speech. It was an organization designed to promote bombing. Okay, now again, he implies that there was a state and federal conspiracy about these things, because you see the flowers around the little girls. I think you might, in your program or your handout, you might be able to see it. But you see those flowers around there. What are those flowers? Those are no, exactly. It looks like roses, but it really. I'm gonna go. I can't say that you're wrong, but in keeping with the symbols that he uses throughout this piece, that's the state. That is the state flower of Alabama. Okay, that's camellias. Okay, and they changed it to camellias in 1959 because it was the goldenrod, and then everybody in Alabama said, well, we shouldn't have that because that's a weed. Okay, so we're not going to have a weed as our state flower. So they switched it over to camellias. Okay. Now you see there's three, basically the lower third of his abdomen is divided up into three scenes. So what do you see when you see those three scenes? Y'all shout it out. Y'all, we informal in here. Or y'all can't, or y'all getting old like me and you can't damn see.
Isn't that like a time thing?
Yeah, it's an hourglass.
Hourglass, yeah.
Okay, it's an hourglass, and that implies that time is running out. Okay, in the upper half of the time of the hourglass, you have vultures or carrion birds or buzzards or something that's circling over there. Basically, in other words, this thing is dead, but it just doesn't know it yet. Okay, dead and doesn't know it. Okay, so now what is the center image is what on the lower third?
It's like cotton.
It's cotton. Okay, cotton is basically the raison d'etre for Alabama. Okay, that it is centrally located in the cotton belt. The cotton made its wealth known. The slavery was enforced because people would have to pick cotton. Okay, what's that bird? I'm giving you that it's a bird. Okay, so what is the bird? What happened?
A pigeon?
Nope, not a pigeon. Okay. No, but it's good. But you see, this is. I really want, the reason why I love this thing, but he packed so much symbolism in this picture that you can get it a little bit, but you really need to know what is going on. To your point earlier about context, that is the yellowhammer, which is a bird, the state bird of Alabama, okay? And it's a yellowhammer, it's a species of woodpecker. And that's a whole joke in of itself. Right, no. We have names for them, okay? And if you grew up in the South, what was the name? Peckerwood, okay? So that was the thing, but that to me, that was not an intentional thing. That just happens to be the state bird of Alabama, but it's ironic that we could look at this and say, oh yeah, that's a peckerwood. Okay, right, all right. But the yellowhammer was also, when Alabama Confederate soldiers fought in the Civil War, they would have some yellow striped fabric over there on their uniform, attached to their uniform, and they would call them yellowhammers, okay? Now, the third thing is obviously a flag. What is that flag?
Alabama state flag?
The Alabama state flag, okay?
But, okay, you know, it's Alabama, it could be also removed to the rebel flag.
No, the rebel flag is on his right bicep. The Confederate flag over there, which was the battle flag of the Army of Northern Virginia. Who led the Army of Northern Virginia? Y'all gonna learn history if I have to kill you. Okay. The Northern Virginia was Robert E. Lee. Okay, that was his group of soldiers. These are not symbols, and Carole and Addie Mae, they were like, they went to their dance classes. One was an A student. The parents were pillars of the community and teachers. They raised money for, muscular dystrophy and all kind of stuff. So, I mean, these are children with lives that were lived that were snuffed out. Okay, and people are going to say like, okay, well, that's because they were part of the Children's Crusade. No, they did not take part in the Children's Crusade. They were not marchers. Only thing was wrong with them was they came to church on the wrong day at the wrong time. Okay, that's what they were guilty of. Okay, they were not guilty of anything other than that. Okay, and the proven, what I'm saying is, in terms of protesting, there was never an acceptable form or time for protest, because this is like Martin Luther King. We went over this letter from the Birmingham jail. You know, when would the right time be that we should protest? How fast should we go? When somebody's standing on your neck and you can't breathe, how fast should they get off your neck? Okay. Okay, this is my favorite piece. One of my favorite prints is one of the like very inexpensive prints, but it is phenomenal. I remember Birmingham. This is showing you like the 4 little girls, the outline of their face. Okay, so John does a similar thing that Billy Morrow did. Okay. Now everybody looking like that, they think of this man as on a cross, but that's not a cross. That is a lynch rope, as evidenced by, you see the rope around his neck, his chin is thrust upward, his legs are dangling. So it references the crucifixion of Christ or lynch victims as a body, but this is not a crucifixion, this is a lynch rope, okay? And that's the guy who's hanging, okay? Everybody thinks like this is a crossbar, but this is pointing out that that's not a cross or timber. That's a bundle of dynamite. That is a bundle of dynamite. So the preferred instrument of death, beside the lynching, but in this case the bombing, is dynamite. Okay, one of the first persons that they basically had enough evidence within the first 5 days to at least charge Chambliss, but he was not charged with murder or bombing. He was charged by possession of dynamite, which he had 122 sticks of dynamite that they found on him. Okay, that in the background you can see like this is this a church or is this a Klansman hood? Okay, that's again the centrality, the Klan and its relationship with the church. You see the 4 quote unquote 4 windows and a cross perhaps on the steeple of the church, or is this a Klansman's hood? I mean, in the cross imagery has always been abundant in Klan lore, because again they have a cross burning. They resent that you call it a cross burning, because they say like, oh, we're lighting the cross in terms of we're lighting the cross to basically shine the light and bring, you know, Christianity would be dispelling the darkness. So that's in the film. So is it a Klan hood, or is it a church? Okay, or it can be both. He was deliberately ambiguous in this situation. Okay, all right. This is a target. Okay, that was corresponding with the handcuffs, and then there was 4 crosses in the corners of this piece that you know, death and finality and all of that, based on the fact that these little girls were killed. All right. What's your question?